Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our walk of the week. This week, I've chosen a very specific route that I think is going to be a fitting follow-up to my first year reflections of Los Angeles. I realized that there's a very specific segment of that reflection that we really haven't done a deep dive of, at least not as much as the other angles of the city that I think we've covered pretty well. LA is a place of contrasts, and this is something that should be of no surprise to any of you, right? I mean, we have seen all the different angles of this city, from the nice and highly affluent areas. We've seen the mountaintops, the beaches, all that beautiful stuff. And we've also explored some of the more dilapidated parts of town that you may consider urban decay, right? We've seen all that. What's not as common for us is to see both extreme ends of that spectrum in a single walk. We definitely have. The walk that comes to mind is the Mid-City Walk, but today's going to be a little interesting because we're going to be walking into an enclave area, which is an area, a specific section of the city with a very specific atmosphere that's completely surrounded by a different section of the city with a very different atmosphere. And the borders of that for today are going to be pretty well defined. And if you haven't figured out what enclave I'm talking about, it is the University of Southern California, or USC, which is in South Central LA. It's completely surrounded by an area called Historic South Central, which is a part of town that the city is quote unquote trying to revitalize. So we're going to look at what that looks like. We're starting in Historic South Central, and then we're going to walk into USC. We're going to check out the village and everything, and we're going to compare and contrast the vibe of the two areas. This all leads directly into our theme for today's walk, which is that your environment has a huge impact on your perspective and your experience of the place in which you live. And this is something that matters to me very much, because the area that I live in is a lot more similar to what we're going to see in Historic South Central than what we're going to see in USC Village. And I realized that a lot of my, negative opinions about Los Angeles and about some of the people that I've encountered, because people here, they can be kind of hit or miss. And this is also something we're going to talk about today as well.
What makes this area historic? Well, a lot of the buildings here haven't been torn down since they were first built. What tends to happen in an area like this is that the city will start building new constructions around the historic ones. This lends to some fairly mismatched aesthetics. Note this bakery, for example, which was founded in the 1930s and is still run by the third generation of the same family. They converted to a specialty bakery in 1956. Today, this little shop is one of the largest producers of sweet potato pies on the West Coast. Not far across the street is this building, which is much more modern. Without context, you could safely assume these were anywhere. That's because they don't fit with the aesthetic we have seen so far. In cases like this one, the building appears to be newer, or at least renovated to still match the look of the surrounding area. Street markets are very common in this neighborhood. Furthermore, the people are usually welcoming, and it's actually normal to say, "Hi, how are you doing?" In big cities like this, that simple human connection can get easily lost when we've conditioned to keep to ourselves and our business. But here, the social attitude of a bustling big city is less present. I find this to be quite common in non or less gentrified neighborhoods. I believe that's because the communities who live here are those who always have, but over time they have been moved around by the city to cater towards those moving here. The sense of history and community remains intact, which is a reflection of the people. A big place like LA is definitely rife with toxic personalities, but in my experience, where you spend your time is a big factor in who you will find. Of course, there is another angle to this, which is quality of life in these areas. What defines quality of life? Here you can see a building that looks like it has been burned down for quite some time. In decades past, this was not exactly a safe area, and even today, it isn't one I would be out at night walking around. On any given day, there's not a range of inspiring things to see and do. This has a huge impact on one's overall motivation and state of mind. I don't live in this area exactly, but this photo looks a lot like what's near my house. I can walk to a liquor store and not much else. It's incorrect to confuse historic with utterly dilapidated. This building here is the latter. Now consider what your view of LA might be if this is what you saw every day. But like other neighborhoods in the city, it isn't consistent. Would you believe this nicely maintained section was on the same street? Well, in fact, you can see some history in the top left area. People in these areas can be friendly, or they can be tough. But but I don't find them generally to be artificial. Much like the area itself, it's changing, but it still retains its character. Still, safety can be a valid concern in these areas, and we got a taste of that in Westlake last week. This is exactly one factor gentrification aims to improve. Given these factors, it's easy to see why gentrification is always a complex issue. Both good and bad things come from it, and which one depends entirely on who you are and whether you live here. I'm a transplant, and always will be. That means there is one other angle to this area that I'll never fully experience: personal connection. Areas like this mean something to the people who live here. That bakery has been here for almost a whole century. That kind of deep connection to a neighborhood is part of what makes it a unique place. Regardless of whether I as a transplant would want to live here, this neighborhood isn't catered to transplants, and that's a good thing. Keep all these factors in mind as we now cross the 110 and enter the USC area, which very much is catered to transplants. Only about half the students enrolled are from California. The rest come from other states, and in 2021, about 15% came from out of the country. Figueroa Street is a very dense commercial street that is always under construction. Its close proximity to USC is likely why it receives a lot of development. A detour off into one of the neighborhood streets, and the entire atmosphere is completely different. Can you see why? It's because this is where all the sorority and frat houses are concentrated. Here's one of them. Some of them, like this one, have opted for the artificial grass that still looks nice, but others like this one require real grass and a whole lot of it. This is Alpha Delta Pi, by the way. What amazes me is the fact that University Park, the name of this neighborhood, is statistically one of the poorest by median income, yet it presents as one of the nicest, an interesting contrast. Obviously, it's because this area is catered to students. What does this tell us about environmental influence? Do you think students would prefer to live in a robust area like historic South Central while studying at USC? Of course not. That's why all this shit is here. This is USC Village, and there's a history here that you'll want to know about. USC Village is a new construction built in 2017 that is now part of the USC campus. It's the largest development in the history of South Los Angeles, designed to enhance the student experience. But what did this area replace, I hear you asking? The old University Village, built back in the 1960s, used to serve this area and the community who lived here. All of it was entirely demolished for the new USC Village. To reiterate, University Park is not exactly a wealthy area, so the site of a Trader Joe's and Target make it very clear that this village was built for the students, not the surrounding community. These are the only Trader Joe's and Target stores in all of South LA. The atmosphere is a complete 180 from what's right outside. The stores and prices reflect what you would find on the west side, which generally just keeps the lower income communities out. The catch-22 is that USC Village has lots of resources for people who can afford it, and it's a great hangout hub for people who can afford it. It's a classic example of a place built to attract a particular audience at the expense of the community already living here. I come here and do a lot of people watching. It is a great place for that. You get some insight on student campus life, and that's something I never experienced since I attended entirely online. We are now going to walk through the USC campus proper, which has a fairly similar feel. Fun fact, USC is the largest college in LA with nearly 50,000 students. UCLA, though perhaps more known, is second to that.
So we are just walking through the USC campus. Now it is summer right now, so the campus is a little quieter than normal, but it's a very, very nice campus. I feel like perfectly safe here walking around. I'm not like looking over my shoulder or anything like that, which is something that I do in some of those other areas like South Central, even where I live. It's a little different here, you know. Places like this are built to sustain a safe, atmosphere for students. It doesn't necessarily reflect the state of things outside of here. It doesn't necessarily reflect the real Los Angeles. But hold on, what defines real Los Angeles? I mean, could it not be argued that the area that we're in is just as real as the neighborhood that sits right outside of here? Furthermore, does my definition of real constitute what makes up a large portion of the city, or more specifically, its non-gentrified segments? Or does it mean the parts of the city that it used to be, that reflect what it used to be but no longer is? Well, if we're going with that definition, then you could say places like Koreatown and Thai Town and all these other cultural districts that really make up what makes LA unique are less real if we're just comparing it to, you know, what LA used to be in its very early foundings. And you can see as we dive into this that it really makes the question really complicated when it comes to Los Angeles, because again, LA does not have a single identity. It doesn't have a singular culture or history for that matter. I mean, it really is the paradigm of a melting pot. And this is why generalizations simply do not work here. The more that I've gotten out and explored other parts of LA, and the more that I've seen all of its different angles and met all these different kinds of people, the more that I have realized that you have no idea what you're gonna get on any given day. It could be good, it could be bad, but the point is that whatever it is, that single experience doesn't define Los Angeles. It only defines that specific experience, that specific interaction at that specific place at that specific time of day. You see where I'm kind of going with this?
That was basically a lot of rambling to say your environment and who you surround yourself with make up most of your perception of a place. Case in point, students who never leave USC will have no idea about the reality of the area around them. We are now outside USC and are crossing over to the final location, Expo Park. Expo Park is huge and is full of museums like this one, the California African American Museum. In fact, this entire complex is a popular tourist destination.
So right here we've got the huge California Science Center, amazing facility and really a beautiful building. I've been here once or twice, and I'm planning to come back actually because right now they have a special exhibit, as you can see right here, the Maya exhibit, which I think is really fitting considering my most recent trip. So I think I'm going to come back soon and visit that. But then if we look across here, down here we have just this beautiful pavilion. There's a rose garden in here, all different types of roses and different things, and there's a beautiful fountain. And this is also where the Museum of Natural History is. We're going to take a look at that in a moment. It's down that way.
This is the Natural History Museum, which is very comprehensive and I recommend a visit. And the pavilion is so lovely just to chill. So much beautiful greenery in an otherwise concrete jungle. Being surrounded by plant life is really important to me. This is not something in huge abundance within the surrounding area. Speaking of that surrounding area, yep, right out of the park, the vibe instantly changes again. We are back in gritty South LA. During the day, this area is fine, and in fact very lively. At night, I wouldn't recommend walking around here. I live relatively close to here, and I've seen how rough it can be, but that's not the only thing that defines an area like this. You're still going to get the best and most authentic Mexican food in the city here, especially at the street vendors who set up. Deep in the neighborhood, we have this gem, the Vermont Square branch. This library is unique because it isn't on a commercial street. It's completely surrounded by houses, giving it a very local feel. So you see, reality can be rough, but perception is how you manage it. To many people, this is home.
Alright guys, full disclosure, I am recording my outro here in Expo Park just because I just think it's a really fitting place to do it, even though by the time I post it, I will have already shown you, some of the area outside of it, just because I wanted to show you that last little bit of contrast. So, hope you guys enjoyed today's walk. This was definitely a much deeper dive into some topics than we normally do. It was certainly deeper than I was expecting to go today, but hey, I think we addressed some really important things today, and these are things that I think about on a daily basis. I have gotten to see so many different versions of this city, if you will, and what I've learned is that this place is a lot more complex than the media or anything you might read might have you to believe. This is a place that truly cannot be defined so easily, other than that it is a canvas for anyone to be anything they want to be. And that seems to be pretty accurate from what I've observed so far. And yeah, my experience, it has been a little bit of a mixed bag. That's true. But what has remained consistent are the days that I go out specifically to explore, such as on Wednesdays that we do this. These are always my favorite days. These are always my favorite things to do, because I'm an explorer, and LA is an explorer's paradise beyond all else. One thing I want you to take from my content, specifically these walks, is motivation to get out there and explore. Go check out some new places. Go visit an area in wherever you live that maybe you otherwise wouldn't. Chances are you're going to find something that surprises you. And that's really what it's all about, right? Is to subvert the expectation, learn something new about a place or its people, right? Expand your perspective is really what it's all about, for me anyway. You know, it's okay to be a little anxious about things in life, right? Keeps you on your toes, I think. Let that anxiety motivate you. Let it guide you. And eventually, you won't be as anxious anymore. That's how the comfort zone expansion works, right? There's something out there for everyone, and you'll find it, even if you have to make it yourself.